Writing Vim plugins is an excellent way on how to become much better at editing files. Vim is very powerful already by itself, but if you can extend it, if you can find things that you can do with Vim that the editor doesn't offer, you can craft these new tools and create plugins to make a better experience. We'll see how we can do that from scratch and today and put some of these things that you can do with plugins and create a not only a good plugin and something useful, but also how to connect it and make it look like a command in Vim. Let's get started. So here is one example on how does a plugin look like? How's a Vim plugin look like? This plugin is one of mine, and what it does is it formats and validates JSON files. Behind the scenes, it's using some Python, but that's not really interesting for what we want to do today. We want to create one from scratch, but you can see there's only one README and one directory here called plugin, and then here's the actual file, and then that's it. But how does it work, right? How can we make these things useful? How can we connect these to Vim and how we can use it? Well, if we look all the way, here's some usage, which is called like that. And let's just try to do the same, but from scratch. Now, I'm going to quickly switch to my vimrc, and my vimrc file has a function already. So I'm going to change to the terminal, and I am going to open my vimrc file. And inside my vimrc, you can see that I have here in line 400 lines of configuration file. That's incredible. That is what the function that I'm going to take, and I'm going to make it a plugin. So what's going on here? This is a function called format XML, and so I'm setting the file type, or actually looking for the file type on line 419, and then you can see that if the file type equals nothing, I'm going to force it to be XML. Then I'm going to execute this search and replace. I'm searching for tags that are not separated. I'm going to enter a carriage return. I'm going to make a new line. And finally, I'm going to reformat everything as if it was a generic XML file. So it takes unformatted XML and formats this thing for me. So how does it look like? When you have a function, when you have something like this inside your vimrc, you have to call this function. Okay, so let me open a new tab, and let me go to Documents and Vim Plugin. And in here, I have a few XML files. So let's take a look at wine ratings small. And here's an unformatted XML. So the way I would use that function, it would be, let me make this, put it up here. It would be something like call and then format XML, which is the name of my function in my vimrc. Any function in your vimrc will be automatically loaded. So if I call these, boom, it works. It does exactly what I need. Note that the plus is set here because the file is now modified. So this is great. It does exactly what we want, but we want to make it a plugin. Now that calling doesn't really, it doesn't really feel like a plugin, right? We're just calling something, a function, and then we're making some things happen. So I'm gonna do undo here. So how does a plugin work? Well, first everything starts with structure, and this XML You have the option to make it a file type plugin. That is a plugin that will be matched to a specific file type. In this case, we want this to work with anything, because if the file type doesn't exist, it will set it. What is a file type thing? If I'm writing a plugin that is only for Python, then I can, by the structure, if I create a plugin with a specific structure for Python, then it will only load for Python. If I do it for XML, then it will only load for XML. But if I make it generic, I can just change the structure, and Vim will load it always. So in here, we're gonna create this plugin, let's call it the XML formatter. So something like this. It's just any name is fine. And inside of here, I am going to set some structure. So I mentioned that we have to create a directory. We're gonna call it plugin, and inside of plugin, we are going to have a Vim file, and we're going to call this thing sure XML formatter .vim. So what we need to do here is really the same thing that we would end up doing in our vimrc file, but you know, we're going to extract that function out. So we're going to enter here, and now what we're going to do is go back to our vimrc file, and I'm going to copy this function, go in here, put it there. Now this thing exists in there. That's fine, but this function is now it now needs to be mapped. So let's see how we can map this function. But how can we map these, right? Because if we go back to the vimrc, I'll show you some of my commands. Let's go back to the vimrc. We can see that we do this with command. I'll show you in a second. I have a bunch of commands here. Yeah, there you go. So here I have some commands, right? Command bang means like, hey, like just make these, not repeat this command. Here's a good one, edit the vimrc on line 255. What it does is it allows me to call vimrc, and that will edit my vimrc. So if I do, you know, if I start typing here at the bottom and I say vim and I hit tab, vimrc will be there to autocomplete. So vimrc is this. Now we could go back here and say, hey, like you can actually say command, and then we can say for example format XML, and then that means call format XML like that, and that would work. Okay, so but there's one problem here. And the problem is that this function is publicly available. We don't want to make our function publicly available or available in the global scope. That means if I'm here, I can say again, call that should not happen, right? So I'm gonna I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm gonna go back to my vimrc. I'm gonna search for format XML. You can see here I have this nifty mapping here with my leader key, but I want to, there we go. I wanna comment this out. Okay, I wanna comment this out. I wanna make it not available, and then I want to make my plugin have that formatting thing, and without exposing the function. I'm going to go back to my other file here. If I right quit that, well, first I need to go, and you might be asking, it's like, okay, but Alfredo, like that, okay, it's format XML, it's fine, but how do you make it kind of like private? Well, we do that by prefixing with s:. That makes it private. It's no longer available. So, and when we call it over here, then we need to call it with s and colon, prefix it like that. So, so that works perfectly, right? But now we have a problem, because I'm gonna exit out of here. I'm gonna right quit this. If I start Vim again, reload all my plugins, and I type here at the bottom call format XML like before, I'm hitting tab, and this is not working. Unknown function format XML, so that's no longer there. It's no longer available. It doesn't work because we commented it out, and we have our plugin here that should help us. So okay, great. Like we have the let's see, tree. We have this XML formatter directory. We have a plugin, and we have the XML formatter Vim. What do we do? How do we make this a plugin? Well, this is already a plugin. So if XML, if I was here and I wanted to publish this as a plugin, that's all you need. Use the directory that says plugin XML formatter, and you're good to go. I am using a system to load my plugins, and it's called Pathogen by Tim Pope. Tim Pope is an amazing Vim plugin author, and he creates lots of nifty features. But regardless of how you're loading your plugins, you can use pretty much anything, because this respects the file structure and directory structure needed for a Vim plugin. So let's make that available. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to go back to my home directory, and I'm going to go to that Vim, which is my Vim directory. And here you see I have autoload, bundle, and colors. I'm going to go into bundle, which is kind of like what Pathogen, the plugin Pathogen, needs in order to install or make available my plugins. These are all the plugins that I'm using. So I am going to copy the plugin that we were just working on, which is this Vim plugin, and it is XML formatter. And I copy, well, I want to copy recursively. There we go. So I'm going to copy everything here. So now I have XML formatter. If I go in there and I do ls, there's the plugin, and inside the plugin is my XML formatter. Now, if you noticed, I also have the Jacinto.vim plugin in there. If you do that, there's also like the README RST and the plugin. So technically this should work. We'll see what happens if not. If I run Vim, I should have format XML. So I started typing FO at the bottom, and format XML now works. If I do format XML like that, so we are getting into trouble. We're not handling errors. And what was the deal here? Well, like the plugin is working. You can see here the error was detected at line number 5 in the format XML. Error reporting from plugins and this type of error reporting from Vim itself is just pretty awful. But basically what it means here is that the format XML on line 5 is having an error. So the way to debug this is if you go to your plugin and then open the XML formatter, you go to the, let's set the number here. If you go to actually set relative numbers, so you go to format XML, the function, and you go to the 5th line in the function. You can see that that's this line here that executes this search and replace. That is what fails, and that's the problem that we're seeing. Now, notice that format XML is available, but the function is not available. So if we do call format XML, like I'm hitting tab and it doesn't work, that will just still not work. So this is perfect because we're setting our function to be private, and we're allowing like an entry point, like a way to call this thing with a command. So format XML certainly autocompletes if I start typing it. If I start doing this, it just completes automatically. If I type less, focus or format XML, those are things. One thing that you need to remember is that you can't map a command with a lowercase. It has to be capitalized always. Is a restriction in Vim, and that can create problems. The system won't allow you to do that. Actually, let's try it out so you can see what happens if I write that. Right quit here, so now it's format XML in non-capitalized form, and I open Vim again, I should get an error, and there you go. Error detected while processing XML formatter. User-defined commands must start with an uppercase letter. So there you go. Let's just fix these and edit our XML formatter plugin. And let's just fix these. There we go. So format XML. Now we have the plugin. All right, we have the plugin. That's our plugin. It just says plugin. Now let's just put it to work. I'm gonna go to Documents and Vim Plugin, which is the directory where I have these sample files. I'm gonna do ls. Let's take a look at wine ratings again, the small version. And let's call our format XML thing at the very bottom. I'm typing :format XML. I'm running a command. I'm gonna hit enter, and there you go. That's it. I've created a plugin from scratch, mapping this thing. But now notice again, this is modified. I'm not doing anything. And what I was saying before is that this way of not setting it with a file type is also useful, because if I am, let's assume that this information, this XML information is coming from the web, and I'm gonna quit this, and I'm opening, foo, and then I'm gonna paste that, right? This is not saved. There's no file type associated with these, and I'm going to do format XML, and then it will allow me to well, I haven't saved these, but I can do that, and I can say format XML, and of course I'm getting into trouble. Let's do that, format XML, and it does set it should set the XML version, XML file extension for me, but it kind of doesn't. But what I'm trying to say here, that format XML is available regardless of the file type. And if I were to go back to, let's see, here to my plugin folder, and instead of plugin, I put this into let's do FT plugin. That means a file type plugin. Plugin to FT plugin, and then I go into FT plugin and I do XML. So XML will be the file type plugin. So this would only make it work for XML type files, right? So let's take a look at the tree structure here. I've just moved the XML formatter in there. Now let's see how that looks if I go back to here where I have these files. So if I open foo, which doesn't have any file type associated with it, oh well, it automatically detected XML. But this is kind of like cheating. But let's try to see if we can fool Vim to not detect that as XML. Okay, perfect. Those extra lines allow me to fool the Vim file type detection. So now that is not detected as XML. So format XML is not recognized, right? It's not recognized. And the reason it's not recognized is because Vim says, hey, this file is not an XML file type. And so because I moved the plugin to FT plugin, a file type plugin, then it means it doesn't find it. So now I can force the setting to XML, and I can set file type equals XML, and then format XML works. See the connection? Now it's recognized as an XML. You can see it right here, XML file type, and format XML works. If I do this, my file type plugin works no problem. So that's it. That is how you create a plugin from scratch. There's all kinds of things that you can do and add. You can add arguments to your plugin, and definitely you can enhance the experience of developing with Vim and doing other nifty things by creating file type plugins and plugins in general with a little bit of just a tiny little bit of effort, really. Like, as long as you have a directory structure, then you're good to go. So hopefully you find this useful and you start writing Vim plugins right away.